Hi friends, Dr. Uyiosa here, and I spent the first half of my 20s working as a medical doctor whilst intentionally building my financial literacy skills and investing in property. And one of the life-saving skills that I've developed, other than being able to save lives, is the ability to save money. And you're probably thinking, well, why is this? And there's a quote by the author of The Psychology of Money which explains this best. He said, with your savings, you're buying back your future, which allows you to do what you want with your time. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you 5 things stopping you from saving money and how you can overcome them. Number 1, thinking liabilities are assets. So simply put, a liability is something that costs you money, and an asset is something that makes you money. And a really common example of a misinformed asset is cars. Now, if you don't know me personally, then I will be the first one to tell you that I am a car enthusiast. And as a car enthusiast, I went to a showroom not too long ago, and the salesperson kept referring to the car as an asset and kept talking to me about equity. Now, I will admit there are certain instances where cars can be assets. For example, if I had a chauffeur company, or if I was purchasing a car that was limited edition, or if I had made certain upgrades to the car that would therefore make it go up in value, then you could argue that it was making money. But in this case, I would just be driving the car to work. And on top of that, in having this vehicle, I would have to pay for the maintenance of the vehicle, and that includes road tax, my insurance, petrols, and all the other hidden costs that come with owning a vehicle. If you are not purchasing the car outright, then you will also have monthly repayment. And in the UK, there tends to be 2 monthly repayment options. One is known as PCP and the other is known as HP. And if you're interested in me talking about the two, then let me know in the comment. Now, PCP tends to be cheaper on a monthly basis than HP. Both options will require you to have a certain amount as a deposit, as a contribution towards getting the vehicle. Now, my advice in those instances can be broken down into about 3 points. So my first point is, if you don't need the car and you can actually get to work okay with the mode of transport that's available to you, then exercising delayed gratification is always a winner. And rather than taking the amount of money you need as your deposit, you could invest that into your stocks and share ISA, for example, or in another investment strategy and reap the dividends and the rewards of that later on. Your second option is to use the 20-4-10 rule. And this basically states that you should have 20% of the total value of the car as your deposit, and then you should take out the term for a total of 4 years and make sure that the monthly repayment doesn't exceed 10% of your monthly income. And the last option is to potentially downscale. So rather than getting a fully kitted out car, you could get the model that's maybe 1 or 2 specs lower, and therefore the amount that you would contribute towards the deposit would be less, since the car is of a slight lower value. And the difference in that, you could invest towards something else that will yield better returns than a car will. The statistics show that if you were to purchase a new vehicle, as soon as you left the parking lot, the vehicle would depreciate by 40%, which is absolutely ridiculous if you put it in layman's terms. So if you purchased a car for £100,000, and I'm using that number just because it's easy to work with, as soon as you drove off the parking lot, that car would be worth £60,000. So £40,000 has just evaporated into the air, which is insane. Studies do show though that if you get a slightly older car, the rate of depreciation is a lot slower. And so I always say to people, if you really want a new car, try and get one that's slightly older, just because the depreciation curve is a lot less than it would be if it was a new car. Or try and get a vehicle that is not as decked out, and depending on how long you are trying to have the vehicle for, you could potentially upgrade it yourself if it makes sense to do so financially. Second is using social media to benchmark your wants and your needs. We all have to remember that social media is a marketing channel, and we are constantly being fed with things that we need to purchase, places that we need to go to, and cars that we need to drive. It's all part of the marketing strategy. Now, I'm not not saying that these things are wrong, but it is important to understand the difference between a want and a need. And Maslow did a study called Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs, where he created a 5-tier pyramid system with the most important needs being at the bottom and then the less important needs being at the top. So at the bottom, you found things like shelter, food, safety, and at the top, you found things like self-actualization. And the premise of this, although it's not perfect, it's to remind us that we do not need everything that we see. Delayed gratification is super important when it comes to identifying the things that we do not actually need. So when you're thinking about money and you're prioritizing what to spend your allowance on this month, I would always say think about whether or not you need the actual item that it is that you want to buy. Do you need another pair of shoes? Do you need another bag? Do you need to book another holiday? Are there cheaper options for you? Is it something that could be postponed to later down the line when it makes financially more sense? I recently read a book and he basically said if you ever have to think about whether or not you can afford something, chances are you probably can't afford it. And I thought it was so brutal but super honest, and it's something that I've actually tried to implement myself going forward in helping me to understand, do I really need this thing or do I just want it? If I want it, can it be something that I can push to a later date? Or if I do want it now, can I actually afford to purchase it now? The third is not reviewing your finances. If someone was to ask you right now how much you make every month versus how much you spend every month, would you know that answer off the back of your tongue, or would you have to think about it for a second? Studies have shown that in the UK, 40% of UK's employees live payday to payday and half overspend each month, which can cause a strain on family relationships. An easy way to review your finances is to split them up into buckets. The first bucket being your income and the second bucket being your expenses. So income is basically anything that you do that brings money in. So it could be your day job, it could be your side hustle, it could be your student loan if you're in university, and then your expenses is money leaving your account. Your expenses can be broken down further into 3 categories. So the first being your human needs, and that covers things like rent, food, transport, any dependency costs. The second is loans. So this could be student loans that may come out every month once you have graduated from university, or any personal loans that you may have taken out, for example, for things such as a car or your phone. And then the third category is what I call fun spending, and that's for things like going out, buying new clothes, going on holiday, etc. By being aware of these numbers, you'll be able to therefore understand for yourself what your personal spending habits are like. You'll be able to create a budget, and you'll also be aware of different areas in your finances that you can cut back on, which will also contribute to general mindfulness about your finances. And this leads nicely onto my fourth point. Number 4, not setting a clear goal. You need to have a clear financial goal to work towards, otherwise your chances of achieving it is low. And this applies to nearly everything. The clearer your goal is, or the smarter your goal setting framework is, the increased likelihood that you are to achieve it. And there were 2 scientists that did research into this called Edwin Locke and Gary Lapham, and they came up with a goal setting theory, and it suggests that those who set a clear target and a clear outline are more likely to achieve these goals and found it more effective than vague goals. I personally like to use the what, the why, the when, and how framework when constructing my financial goals and outlines, and I'll break that down for you guys. So the what is the dream, and that could be investing in a house, it could be contributing towards a pension scheme. The when is the timeline, so are we talking about a year from now, 2 months from now, are we talking about 10 years from now? The why is your motivating factor, so what is it that is going to empower you on the days that you're feeling sad and demotivated to continue pursuing your financial dream. And the how is basically how you'll turn the dream into a reality. So in other words, what measures are you going to put in place to make sure that you can get and achieve your financial goal? And in general, there are 2 ways in which you can go about actualizing the how. The first is income-based, and this is finding a strategy to get money to come back into your pocket. And there are loads of different things that you could do. You could start a side hustle, you could become a freelancer and sell your services on websites such as Etsy or Fiverr or Upwork. Whereas the second part is expense-based. And this typically is trying to cut down on your expenses and therefore taking that savings and putting it into your savings pot in order to meet your monthly goal. Now, the most effective way to do this is by looking at point number 3, where we broke the expenses into 3 different pots and identifying which of the pots you could cut down on. So does it mean that you need to eat out less? Do you need to take less holidays? Do you need to do your self-maintenance routine at home rather than going to a salon or going to a beauty parlor? By having a holistic assessment of your finances, you'll be able to identify which pots are most realistic for you to cut down on for the duration that you need in order to make sure that you achieve your financial target. And the last is inconsistency. Consistency is key because this is what allows your money to compound. And you probably heard of the greatest investor of all time. His name is Warren Buffett, and he's worth, a cheeky $118 billion, something cheeky like that. In order for your money pot to grow, you need to consistently put money into it. And this consistency requires discipline. And it all boils down to your why. If you know what your why is, it will help you to feel motivated even on the days where you don't feel like saving and contributing to the bigger picture of your finances. Now, a big misconception about discipline is it's all down to manpower, but this is actually not true. The author of Atomic Habits, James Clear, identified different strategies that everyone can implement in order to help build consistency. And I'm going to list below some of my favorite ones. He suggests breaking down habits into tasks that take less than 2 minutes to do. You can automate your savings by setting up a direct debit every single month where a portion of your money is sent directly to your savings account. And again, that takes literally less than 2 minutes to do. And then once it's done, you don't need to think about it ever again. The second is habit stacking. And this is basically when you take your new habit and you integrate it into an already established routine. And the idea of this is to get your new habit that you want associated with one that you naturally do anyway without thinking about it. So you could potentially add paying yourself on the same day that you decide to pay your bills. And in that way, you've got your pre-existing routine, which is paying your bills on a set day, but you're also incorporating paying yourself in order to make sure that you're able to meet the finance target that you set for yourself. Let's say on the 30th of every month, that's when you pay all your bills, but you want to save an additional £250 per month. Well, in Rich Dad Poor Dad, he talks about the concept of paying yourself first. So if this is a skill or a habit that you want to now develop, then on the 30th, you could apportion a set amount that you want to save every month. And then once you've done that, you could continue on and pay your bills as you normally would do. So that way, you've incorporated your new habit that you want to form into a pre-existing one. The key thing to remember here, it's not your one-off action that has the biggest contributing factor. It's actually the consistency of your little actions that leads to extraordinary results because they compound over an amount of time. If you got to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment what the most important thing that you learned was. And if you have any other ideas for further videos, then do share them in the comments as well. Otherwise, I'll link below other videos that I've created in this series that you may also enjoy. Share this with someone else who needs to know the gems that were dropped today. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.